It's 8:15 on a Thursday night right now on BBC Essex. I'm Rob Jelly, and what I like to do at this point is dive into the BBC Upload bag. It's a metaphorical bag. It's not actually a bag. It is a computer folder where you can add your stuff right now for free. And it's super simple. In fact, don't take my word for it. Let me ask my first uploader tonight. David, how simple is it to upload?
Very simple. Took me 2 minutes.
There you go. See? Easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. David Pearman back on the show again. It's been a while, David, since we last spoke. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I think it's been about 6 months, hasn't it?
Yeah. I'm very aware sometimes it can be over a year between people sending us stuff, and that, by the way, not a criticism. I'm just saying it's always lovely when I see a name again. I'm like, oh, haven't heard from so and so in a while. It's great to see him back, and BBC Uploader will be here for you. You know, it's not going anywhere anytime soon, and I hope anyone that listens to this, if you're not a creative person but you know someone who is, let them know. I'm here on the show on BBC Essex to bring some of this to life, and we'll share as much of it as we can fit in for as long as you keep sending it. Whether it be poetry, like you've provided with us, David, tonight, or music, podcasts, storytelling, comedy, screenplays, stop motion. Maybe you're following in the steps of Guillermo del Toro. Have you seen the new Pinocchio film, David?
I haven't, but I've heard good things.
The two new versions of Pinocchio, both the one with Tom Hanks and the one that Guillermo del Toro made, both phenomenal bits of filmmaking. But Southend poet David, you're back with us again. Now, we're going to get into the piece this evening. There's a reason I'm not telling you what it's called at the moment, because we'll get to that as well. Do you read or watch much poetry yourself for your own enjoyment, David?
I think I try and force myself to read poetry. You know, when I started writing poems, it wasn't because I had an interest in poetry. It was just I needed an outlet for certain, you know, for the sake of psychological catharsis. And I think my love for reading poetry actually came later on. You know, after I'd been writing for 2 or 3 years, and I think it's great to read poetry, not just write poetry, because then you're not just in your own echo chamber. You know, you can't know if something you're writing is good or bad unless you have an outside reference point. So yeah, my love for poetry has definitely been a latent thing, but I try and do it as much as possible because I feel like it makes me a better poet.
I mean, I don't think there's a wrong way to kind of evolve and learn a craft, whether it be poetry or, you know, you work with pottery. You know, I don't think there's a wrong way. I think as long as you're expressing yourself with it and sort of open to learning as lessons present themselves, I think that's always a good thing. I just wonder, because for me, of late, I found myself on TikTok, funnily enough, kind of stumbling upon people who are reading poems. Now, I don't know if some of them that I've watched and listened to were originals from the people that have read them, or if these people have found a poem from somewhere else that they've really liked and shared. But I found myself kind of almost mesmerised at times for quite a while, like watching people kind of read it and such. And for me, I'm aware that not everyone's happy to present their work or to get up on a stage and perform it and such. For you, is it something you do? Are you trying to get towards that, or is that something very much a no-no for you, getting up on stage and performing your poetry in front of people?
So I performed for the first time last April, so it's been about 10 months since my first performance. You know what? I don't think it's like the be-all, end-all of expression in that way. I think some people just write for themselves sometimes, and for a long time, that's what I did. You know, I'm 30 now, so I've been writing for over 10 years, but it took me about, 9 or 10 years before I actually decided to get up on a stage and perform. And it was only because I was at that point in my life where I felt like I wanted to share it with people, and it has to be right for you. You know, you shouldn't just want to get it out there just because, I don't know, you want to be famous or whatever. It has to come from a natural sort of place, I suppose.
I'll echo that as well, David, by saying that whilst BBC Upload is here for everyone in Essex, no matter what art you make, however long you've been making it for, if you make something for you, don't send it to me. I don't want you to feel the pressure to send it to me, or, you know, send it to BBC Upload. Share it with anyone. Like, if it's for you, like you say, for you, early days, David, you wrote it for yourself. It was a catharsis in that sense. That was almost the it's like a processing of emotions. Like, sometimes you can't understand how you're feeling, but you know you can capture it in some words. So that's the way you deal with it. If that's what you do, keep doing it. Keep doing it and don't change anything about what you're doing, because I think that's a key thing. I was only saying to people earlier on, like, for me, I'm not a big runner. I don't like running. But every now and then I need a run. And it's actually not a physical thing. It's a mental thing. I need to just do something which I know I don't have to consciously think about. I can just shoes on, headphones on, and run for a bit. So yeah, and it's a strange thing. But what do you feel that there's a difference between someone hearing your poetry and reading it?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, when I started performing the poetry, it was definitely a learning process. You know, when I first started reading, I just kind of read it in a really monotone, sort of unenthusiastic sort of way, partly because I was nervous. But
Yeah.
I mean, I still do that now because that's the way my voice sounds. But then I learned to kind of put cadences into it and tone, and it becomes less of a process of reading it and performing it. You know.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. It's almost like acting, I suppose. You're acting out the words.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually you could perform it back to back twice, and if you put the intonation in ever so slightly different place you suddenly change the whole meaning to it.
Totally.
Which again is part and parcel, I think, of the beauty of art. It's that on any given day you can I'll use the word receive a piece of art, whether it's painting or a poem or music, and feel very differently about it the following day if you can't receive it again. It's I mean, actually, this is reminding me back when we were talking about art a few weeks ago on hashtag Essex, and how art galleries, you know, do we like them or not? And it is about you on the day. It's you as an artist when you come to write it, but it's also us as the audience and how we receive it. What frame of mind are we in as well? So, are you a fan of birthdays, David?
I think when I was a lot younger, yeah, but then, you know, everyone's probably like that a little bit. I think birthdays and Christmas as well, and just holidays in general are, sometimes they can be for kids, you know, especially Christmas, but birthdays, I think it depends on who you have in your life, I suppose. If you're alone, you know, a birthday's nothing because you don't have anyone to celebrate it with. So I think birthdays are a lot about the people around you, and in that sense, they kind of take on a different meaning as you get older and you learn that. So yeah, I suppose I've got kind of a weird relationship with birthdays, and also, you know, the whole getting older thing. Sometimes it can be a bad thing, but there's certainly a dichotomy to it. You know, it can remind you of all the good stuff as well.
I'll second that, Davey, because I felt weird when I turned 30. You know, I suddenly thought, like, oh, I can't get away with being, like, you know, really childish anymore, because suddenly, like, you realise when you get to 20, like, oh, actually, like, I know on paper I'm an adult, but actually, like, there's very little responsibility when you're 20 for most people's lives and things. You go, brilliant, I get to string out being about 17 again for a little while longer. And then slowly but surely, like, 27, 28 creeps up, and then, like, bang, 30, like, now I actually have to, like, people now actually expect me to do sort of the grown-up thing and whatnot. And I don't know about you if it's happened yet, but I've had moments in the last probably three or 4 years, and unrelated to what happened in the world, but I've gone, actually, no one no one who's an official grown up actually knows what they're doing. They're all winging it. They're all making it up as they go along, and quite frankly, a lot of them don't always look that happy. So I'm just gonna continue being a child and mess around quite a bit because I prefer that. And I guess there's no wrong way to it, and I think it's why I've also started to appreciate that art can mean so many different things to so many different people based on your own experiences in life. And like you say, there'll be people who absolutely love birthdays and will hear what we're about to play in a moment with a set of ears that people who are not really bothered by birthdays won't get. And I think that's quite nice. You said to us when you uploaded the track, you put a little sentence alongside it saying that you had a friend who told you that it was tired of growing older. And this was sort of your way of reminding him that, you know, there are good things. Birthdays represent good things as well. You know, it's not necessarily all bad and doom and gloom. Would you like to give this person a particular mention, the person who inspired this piece, or would you like to keep that to yourself?
Well, this was a couple of years ago. I had a friend who was a lot older than me. I was 28 at the time, and he was, I think he was in his 50s. And his birthday was coming up, and, you know, I was his friend. So, of course, I wanted to celebrate it. But I kind of got the feeling that he just wanted to, you know, forget about it, you know, bury it, put it under the rug.
Yeah.
And I suppose I wrote the poem as a way of, like you said, reminding him of all the good stuff about birthdays. But as I was writing it, I did kind of get the sense that I was writing it for myself as well, because I've always had this feeling that that I was scared of growing up and growing older and scared of death, really. I mean, that's the crux of it, isn't it? You know, being scared of death. That's why we fear getting older. And so the benefits of the poem were kind of twofold. And I found that all the things that I was kind of saying to him about, you know, the benefits of birthdays, I was kind of saying them to myself as well.
Yeah. So the things you wanted to hear someone else say to you.
Exactly. Yeah, basically. But it's one of those things, like when you have these thoughts in your head, I think it's harder to be introspective than it is to examine something that's outside of you. So when you put it on the page, it's like it's no longer a part of you, it's part of the world, and you can sort of look at it from a more clear perspective, I suppose. That's why I write, basically.
100% agree with you. Really, and I really relate to that, and I know there'll be other people that relate to that as well, David. So yeah, I completely understand that. Before we hear "Happy Birthday," which we'll play in a moment, can we find your poetry anywhere else, David? I want to make sure that people are able to find, you know, those who send us stuff on upload, if it's available online somewhere, or if there's a spoken word poetry night you're at soon. Anything you want to give a mention or plug to?
So you asked me this last time, and I still haven't made any progress in uploading it, which is bad.
No, but listen, it's lovely that we're exclusively playing it on BBC Essex tonight, David. That's always quite a nice thing, regardless. So it's fine. Like I said at the start, and like you said, for you, when you first started doing poetry, it was catharsis. It was for you. Only of recent have you started to feel like you want to share with other people as well. As and when it happens, make sure you let us know so we can pass it on and spread the word as well. And that goes for anyone else who has sent us something or is maybe thinking about sending us something. bbc.co.uk/upload. Take a look at the page. Really simple page, nice and straightforward. You can get your stuff heard on the show in the future weeks. David, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Thank you again for trusting us. Will you introduce your poem, please?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is David Pearman, and this is my poem, Happy Birthday.
That time of year arrives again, to celebrate, but not the hands are turning. The sun may rule the world of men, but time is neither old nor burning. For the time that's yours is always young, and what's always young is always pure. Even the ladder's highest rung is not the final one, I'm sure. Follow your own path to the letter. Yours is one where no other has been. And if you stray, just know that it's better to kill time than to let it die unseen. But a life that cannot be lived always must always be lived to the fullness of life. And where can we live but what we call days, with which it may seem that living is rife? But let not that myth postpone the present for the effervescence of ephemeral youth. You may find that life is far more pleasant when evanescence meets the eventual truth. That all of life's winters exist for the sake of all of its springs, for just one of those springs may seem a mere ripple in a vast lake, but one that may create 1,000 rings. Whether 40 years or 100 score, how long it lasts is anyone's guess, but with knowing you had 100 more, not render the first 100 less. For what youth is held with prudent hands, and used to make the much of time, to blindly trust these falling sands will persevere long past your prime, is surely but a foolish claim, and serves to prove a fall of youth. Forever too is but a foolish aim, and that ignorance should not then be proof, that ignorance is the only form of bliss. Memories may be mere shadows of life, but not every shadow that we reminisce must acquaint the here and now with strife. If ever it feels like a bridge you've crossed, think not of whence you came as forsaken, for what you've had is not now what's lost, but what you have now that can never be taken. And to those who think it unnecessary to look back on winds that can no longer sway you like before, what does the very existence of something like memory say? That life was meant to be remembered. We were meant to recall the past. Just as the flame from every moment embered must burn, so must their shadows be cast. I've seen those who live only in the shade of the past, who saw no need for the bright of the present swiftly fade and pass them quicker than the speed of light. So don't get hung up upon the number. No one just ages a year overnight, and to think it so is to encumber oneself, and is surely an oversight of this day and all of its worth, to celebrate what it means to exist, not the turning of time, nor of the earth that turns long after we cease and desist. For whether our bodies scatter in pieces, and whether those pieces should rearrange, in life the only thing really that ceases to change is that nothing ceases to change. So what if nothing is built to last? What if these towers were made to be felled? The past will always be that which has passed, and the future is never meant to be held. But what's now is yours, and all time is now. When one grows yet another year older, the past is not some sacred cow from which one grows yet another year colder. For when life is good, it's a flowery lea, sweeter than the sugar of any bygone cane. All the past can grant us is the power to see that a life that's lived is not lived in vain. Still, it remains, we were born to live. I do not ask this of you with sorrow. If we're born on time, are we born to give, just because we can't relive the time we borrow? If it bears no fruit to question why, tell me what else this life should give, to those who spend it only trying not to die, but one that is wasted, trying not to live. Who has dwelt on roads untravelled, has not left roads to be travelled the same? For when before them new roads unravelled, they longed instead to travel whence they came. So whatever lays upon the hourglass bottom, and whatever still remains yet to fall, let not the former be forgotten, but let not the latter be nothing at all. And like a bird, whatever life in the middle cannot be held in one's hands, set it free. And if ever it starts to feel like a riddle that cannot be solved, just let it be. Don't fret to see the world in a newer way, for as the world must change, so must you. And don't mourn the life that flew away, for that life flew away as all birds must do. There is an ocean in a single tear, and there's an eternity in an hour. And there is happiness in the simple cheer of a memory that shall never sour. So for those for whom more's the pity, for their past do not inspire much, who seek the chance for something pretty, to make the gritty less gritty as such, I wish there were certainties life could bestow. But what need does life have to routinely comply? Only through the years gone by can one know that no, it's not about the years gone by. Light a candle instead for every peer. For what is a birthday if no one knows it? What a man you are every day of the year, but this is the one day when everyone shows it. For the sentiment is dulled which is heard the most, and precious is the time to make much ado. So before the pity of infinity's ghost creeps in, here's a toast, happy birthday to you. Thus, brought back from where you've drifted, to observe up close how each thing stands, the life that falls that can never be lifted, the life that's gifted in the palms of your hands.
Happy Birthday by David Pearman on BBC Upload.